In our genetics unit, we learned that parents will pass down their traits to their offspring. And we first found that out with Mendel's pea plant experiments, where he saw that certain traits were dominant and certain traits were recessive. And not all traits are that simple. Some traits are a little bit more complex, and we learned that with incomplete dominance and codominance. But no matter what, we found out and we learned that traits will be passed on from the parents to the offspring. In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about pedigrees, and I'm not talking about the dog food brand. The pedigrees we're going to be discussing today are diagrams that are like family trees. But instead of putting pictures or names to represent family members, scientists will use symbols or numbers to represent the family members in each generation. So what is the definition of a pedigree? Well, a pedigree is a chart showing a specific trait that's being passed on through the generations of a family. So one pedigree can only focus on dimples, all the people who have dimples in your family and all the people who don't have dimples in your family. Or maybe there's a pedigree that you can make that it will focus only on hitchhiker's thumb, all the people who have it and all the people who don't. So pedigrees will only focus on one trait at a time and who's affected by it and who's not. Take a look at this pedigree that's on the right side. This pedigree shows a family with high cholesterol in their blood. So the symbols that are shaded, the circles or squares that are shaded, represent family members with that trait, the high cholesterol. And those who have blank or unshaded symbols, they don't suffer from this trait. They don't have high cholesterol in their blood. There are three types of pedigrees that we're going to be focusing on, and they are autosomal dominant pedigrees, autosomal recessive pedigrees, and sex-linked pedigrees. Before we learn more about these pedigrees, we have to understand what the symbols are, so you can know, if it's a female or if it's a male, if they're married, if they have kids, things like that. So circles will represent females and the squares will represent men. Now if you see these two symbols, they're not shaded in, they're blank, so that means they are not affected by the trait. They don't have the trait that we're studying at this point. Okay, so if we're taking a look at a pedigree with dimples and you see a circle or square that's blank, that means these individuals don't have dimples. Now if you see a circle or a square that are shaded in, then you know that they are affected by this trait. So the shaded in circle is an affected female, and then the square that's shaded in is an affected male. So if we were to take a look at a pedigree and you see these two symbols and it's all about dimples, that means that these individuals have dimples. Sometimes, and it's not all the time, sometimes you'll see a circle or a square that is half shaded in, and that means that these individuals are carriers. And in this case, they don't have the trait, but they can carry the allele to pass it on to their kids. You may also see a horizontal line between two individuals, and that means that they're married to each other. Sometimes you'll also see a vertical line that's coming from the married couple. And that vertical line will connect to other individuals, which will represent the kids, the offspring. And usually on the left side of the pedigree, you will see Roman numerals, and those numbers represent the different generations. So you'll have generation 1, generation 2, and so on. You'll also see Arabic numbers, okay, within each line, within each generation. And they're usually underneath the symbol or to the side of the symbol, and those represent all the individuals in that generation. So I need you to pause the video and take a look at the problem on your paper. And in this problem, you'll see a pedigree and you need to answer the questions that are there. The last question, you will need to add on to the pedigree using the symbols that we just learned. So let's take a look at the first question. The first question says, what is the name or names of Irene and Leo's sons? Well, let's take a look. Irene and Leo are in the very first generation, and we know that they're married because they have a horizontal line that connects them. They have a line going from left to right. Now, they also have a line that is going vertical or up and down between them. And if you follow that line, it should lead you to three individuals. And who are those individuals? They are Gordon, Emily, and Cheryl. Now the question is, what is the name or names of Irene and Leo's sons? Well, in this case, it's Gordon, and we know that he's the only son because he has this square symbol. Okay, Emily and Cheryl, they are females, and they're represented by the circle symbol. The next question is, what is the name or names of their son-in-laws? So if you see Emily, their daughter, and Cheryl, their other daughter, they're married to two individuals. Emily is married to Richard, and Cheryl is married to Tim. And you know that they're not Irene and Leo's actual sons, they're son-in-laws because they're not connected to the vertical line between Irene and Leo. They are married to Emily and Cheryl because you see that horizontal line, that line that goes from left to right. So then the next question is, how many grandchildren do Irene and Leo have? Well, to see that, we got to look at the third generation. And in the third generation, that is all, those are all Irene and Leo's grandchildren. And of all those grandchildren, there are going to be three girls. We have Juliet, Janet, and Ashley, and they are represented by circles. So, who is Ralph's father? Well, in order to find that, we got to find Ralph, and he's in the third generation. And if we move up the vertical line, going up and down, we see that Gordon is his father. The next question is, what is the name of Ashley's mother? So we find Ashley. Ashley's in the third generation. And if we go up the vertical line, we can see Cheryl is her mother. It says, what is the name of Emily's son? Well, Emily is in the second generation, and she has a son, so we have to see the vertical line going up and down, and we see that her son is Richard Jr. What is the name of Tim's son? Well, Tim is in the second generation, and if we go follow the vertical line, we see that Zach is going to be his son. The last question, you're supposed to build off of this pedigree. You're supposed to draw into it. So in this case, it says Richard and Emily had another son whom they named Roger. So we have Richard and Emily, they're in the second generation, and we're going to follow that vertical line down, and we're going to have a symbol of a square because that is a boy, and we're going to just put Roger's name there. The next one is Juliet married a man named Robert. So we find Juliet. She's in the third generation. She's the first one in the third generation. And she's married, so she will have a horizontal line. Okay, and she's married to a man, so we should have a square, and his name is Robert. And they have a daughter named Elizabeth. So we have to have a vertical line between those two individuals. And since it's a daughter, we have to have a circle to represent Elizabeth. The next one is Zach, and Zach married a woman named Jean. So we have to have a horizontal line connecting Zach with Jean, which is going to be a circle. Now they have a son named Craig, so they need a vertical line between Zach and Jean, and at the end we're going to have a square to represent Craig. Now that you know the symbols of a pedigree and how to construct a pedigree, we're going to be taking a look at the three types of pedigrees that I mentioned earlier: autosomal dominant, autosomal recessive, and sex-linked pedigrees. Now, before we go into those three, we got to know what autosomal means. Well, autosomal means that these are traits that are found anywhere from the first to the 22nd pairs of chromosomes. If it is sex-linked, then that is a trait that's found on the sex chromosomes, the last pair, the X or the Y, or the X and the X. So autosomal means it's only in the first 22 chromosomes, and sex-linked means it's a trait that's on the sex chromosomes.